back. Thursday, the Tennessee Valley Authority's board voted to close 6 more coal-fired electricity plants. That's a big problem, ladies and gentlemen. These 6 plants generate 3,300 megawatts of capacity. Did I say 6? I'm sorry. It was 8 coal-fired plants. This decision was prompted by the EPA and the environmental requirements that are being dictatorially imposed on the nation. Again, outside of congressional constitutional authority by the EPA. The Environmental Protection Agency is on a mission to institute its vision, irrespective of good or bad for the country. They're going to employ and develop and force their agenda upon America. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is dangerous territory. Because we already know that the EPA, 1, is corrupt, 2, that they're biased, 3, that they promote and support the arguments behind global climate change, global warming, global cooling, pick your particular tag. And yet, we also know that we see zero empirical evidence for the truth of that statement. They don't have any empirical evidence. All they're going upon is old news that has already been debunked. So the absurdity of this is that the EPA is out there, first of all, and for those of you who don't remember, it wasn't long ago that the EPA, or the previous woman in charge of the EPA, the head of the EPA, was just caught utilizing a private email account to avoid review of her positions and policies on things. Now, that's a direct and willful subversion of somebody being able to watch over what an administrative agency does. And as soon as the White House, just yesterday, I talked about or posted a story up about how the EPA has delayed the release of these emails that were found out and pulled out of an investigation. And as soon as the White House got a whiff of the potential damage that these emails held, they refused to release the documents under executive protection. The heck does that mean? As soon as it became apparent that Congress, who's doing an investigation into this, was actually going to get these documents and that they were going to be released to them, the White House stepped in and said, oh, no. I'm putting an executive order out that says you can't have those documents. Listen, in a criminal investigation, or even in a civil investigation, that's called obstruction, and people go to jail for that. You cannot obstruct an investigation because you don't want the people who are doing the investigation to see what's in the package of evidence they're trying to look at, even if you are the president. In fact, all the more reason why you cannot. Because to do so is an abuse of power. And that, ladies and gentlemen, constitutes, again, a what? A high crime and misdemeanor. It's a high crime because high crime does not mean high as in big crime. High crime means that you have committed a crime and because you are in a position of higher authority. And you are held to a higher standard. And this is a crime that the ordinary person cannot commit because they don't have the power and authority that you are operating under as delegated authority. And since you have abused that authority, it is a high crime. Utilizing your standing to block investigations is no different than the president of a corporation who finds out that there's some information he doesn't want an SEC or an EPA investigator to see, and he has those records destroyed. Would it be okay if a bank examiner says, hey, I don't want these bank examiner, or the bank president, excuse me, to say, I don't want these bank examiners to see these transaction records that we've been doing with all these, with laundering money for a drug dealer. So I'm going to have these records destroyed. Is that okay? I mean, ultimately, there's no difference. Just that one person, because they sit in the seat of power in the White House, says that, well, we're the good guys. We're always wearing the white hats. Does that truly make it so? I don't think so. How do you justify that? Just because you claim to be on the right side of the high road of morality doesn't mean that you are. And we know that this administration did the same thing with Eric Holder and the documents around Fast and Furious, which is why Congress has right now already started impeachment proceedings against Eric Holder. Now we have the EPA who has come forward and said, we're going to institute these draconian requirements, and it's prompted 8 coal-fired power units to shut themselves down. So, for the record, let's understand the depth of that decision. The Tennessee Valley Authority themselves, these are the board executives, say that this decision was prompted by a combination of environmental requirements imposed by the EPA. And they also say that in an open meeting of the agency's board of directors in an open meeting a couple of weeks ago, they say that their aim is to reduce coal to 20% of their total generating capacity, or half of what it was in 2010. Now, the problem with that, ladies and gentlemen, is that we don't have a fill-in solution for the loss of that power. I mean, I understand if you said to me, hey, we've got these plants that we can replace with something else that's more efficient and more environmentally friendly, I'm okay with that. But when you say, we don't have a replacement, we're just going to shut the power off, that's a fool's errand. And it's not a fool's errand just for the Tennessee Valley Authority. It's a fool's errand for the American people who are relying upon that electricity as a source. And because the free market rules, which apply whether or not the Congress and the president like them or not, they're like natural laws of gravity. And supply and demand affects pricing. And so what this will require is that prices will what? Necessarily skyrocket, directly in line with the president's commitments and statements. The supply drops, the price rises. It's an age-old concept. It applied long before Barack Obama or even the United States of America existed. It's a principle that is as foundational to human commerce as gravity is to the apple that falls. You cannot have a reduced supply and not expect the price to go up. That does not happen. The only way that can happen is when government goes in and dictates, we're reducing the total amount, but the power companies that are producing it have to reduce their pricing as well, or keep the pricing the same, which distorts and skews the marketplace, which is, again, no longer are you operating then in a free market and free enterprise environment. Now, the results of that are not hard to look at and hard to find. I mean, if you go on to the Drudge Report this morning, there was an article out there about how Venezuela just jailed 100 bourgeois businessmen. You know what they did the other day in Venezuela? You're going to love this. They went to the equivalent of they have a big box store. Their inflation right now is so rampant that prices are almost changing by the day. And so for basic goods like, refrigerators, we're talking about hard products now, right? Refrigerators, microwaves, television sets, and stuff like that. There's two markets. There's the government-imposed market, which says this is all you can sell that refrigerator for. And then there's the black market, which is because if you want the refrigerator, first of all, since the manufacturers and the producers and the sellers of the refrigerators are forced to sell them for a price that the government dictates, they just don't have any available. So there's shortages. So if you want a new refrigerator because your old one broke and you don't have any refrigeration at all to store your food, then you are forced to do what? You go to the black market and you buy one. And the price on the black market is 8 times the price that they are in the store. So guess what? The dictator down in Venezuela went out the other day, and you're going to love this. Here's what he said, which is utterly stunning. We're going to force these stores to reduce their pricing, and they had armed police who allowed people to go into the store and buy the televisions and the refrigerators and the microwaves at the price that the government wanted them held at. 8 times lower than what they were actually selling them for. Guess what the people were doing? Well, first of all, they were joyous, right? They went in there with they issued these tickets out to people by lottery. And the people went in and they bought whatever that was they wanted, a dishwasher, refrigerator, an air conditioner, or whatever it was. Then they immediately took them and turned around and sold them on the black market for 8 times the amount of money. They didn't really need the new refrigerator. They just saw an opportunity to cash in. That's the free market, doggone it. And you can't change those laws of those laws of the universe that apply no matter what. So even when you sit there and catch the apple in a basket, at some point gravity will dictate that apple is going to get to the ground. It's absurd. You can artificially stop the apple from getting to the ground by means of the basket. But if the basket's not there, that apple's going to hit the ground. And there's no possible way to catch all the apples. Think of it. This is no different. Now we've got the government saying, well, we're going to force coal-fired plants to close so we can meet an environmental agenda that, by the way, Japan came out yesterday and said they're not going to adhere to anymore. China doesn't adhere to it. India doesn't adhere to it. Russia doesn't adhere to it. So we're the only nincompoops out there that are adhering to it. And you know why? Because we have an administration that is currently running this country that is using what they know to be false information, false science, to impose their will so that they can redistribute the wealth in this nation. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a crime against humanity. It is also known as treason. Because this administration, like every administration before it, has taken an oath to uphold the laws of the land. And they are not doing so. They have taken an oath, and that oath, by its very nature, states that if you have taken this oath, it is in place from the moment that you take it until the moment that you resign from office. And a violation of the oath is perjury or a high crime and misdemeanor, especially when that crime affects literally every American who gets an electric bill. Australia came out the other day, and you know what they said? They told the UN, no longer are we going to allow you to impose carbon credit and Agenda 21 and climate change legislation on us. You know why? Because a brand new conservative party just took Australia over because they've had enough of socialism. Countries around the world that are under socialism are throwing off the rule and the cloak of socialism because they see the damage that it causes to their society, to their nation, to their economy, and to every aspect of their nation's sovereignty and livelihood. But not us. We're running hell-bent for leather right at the brick wall. How absurd. Because we are now under the tutelage and the rule of a sycophantic, hissy-fit little petulant child like Obama? Listen, you don't rule a country by hissy-fit. And if you look at our history, you don't rule a country in the United States. You lead a country. This isn't leadership. This is temper tantrum. And America had better wake up and throw it off. Because I'll tell you, if you don't, and this goes to the topic I spent all day yesterday on, the TPP. Another move, an active, willful, intelligently understood move to destroy the United States from the inside. I get why the House hasn't begun impeachment proceedings yet, because Eric Holder is the head of the Department of Justice. He's the guy who's got to assign a prosecutor. That prosecutor is going to be biased, and he's going to be hand-chosen by Eric Holder to protect his boss, who both of them are ideological bed partners. They're incestuous in their ideas and concepts and agendas. And so, and then, of course, you've got a Republican or a Democratic Senate that's going to do everything it can to defeat and derail an impeachment. I'll tell you what, if we don't get this thing solved soon, two things are going to, there's only two ways to resolve this. One is that Americans are going to have to stand up on their hind legs and say, we've had enough collectively, and we are not asking you. We are telling you if you do not resign, we will remove you by force. All of you. Not the president, not the Justice Department, not the judicial system, not the legislative, the whole flippin' mess. Not 20,000 who were easily defeated during the bonus March years in the 30s when they tried to go out there and get justice. 20 million. There ain't enough Black Hawk helicopters and National Guard troops to stop that, ladies and gentlemen. But if we don't march on the castle with torches and pitchforks soon and demand that they send out the monster so that we can get this thing resolved and go on about our peaceable way again, we're done. I don't get what America's waiting for. Well, I don't have the time to go sit in Washington and camp out on the White House lawn. I've got a job I got to show up at. I mean, what do you expect me to do? Lose my house and my car? I got a mortgage and a car payment, man. I got to pay the electric bill. How short-sighted. How short-sighted. You know, our founders said to us, at the bottom of a document which really quite clearly outlined the position of the new nation, they said, and for the support of this declaration, and with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. They were rich men. They were moneyed men. They were landowners. They were merchants. They owned businesses. They had a lot to lose. But they also recognized and understood that their reliance, firm reliance upon divine providence, and I don't care whether you believe that to be the universe, nature, God, I don't care. I am telling you that there are powers which are beyond our comprehension that will support our effort to be righteous, to be true, to be honest, to be restored to liberty and freedom. That's what the universe wants. That's what God gave you when he gave you that little kernel, that seed that lives within your heart and in your mind. It's called free will, choice, liberty, freedom. And if you'll just water it, if you'll just nurture it, if you'll just fertilize it, it will grow, mature, and bear fruit. But if you refuse out of fear, if you refuse to do that which you know must be done in order for you to grow and mature that tree of liberty so that it will bear its fruit, so that you can eat again, then you will starve to death in a prison of your own making. The choice is yours. Decision is up to you. But just remember that the decision that you make today as to whether or not you're going to water and nurture and feed that tree of liberty doesn't just affect you. It affects you, it affects your children and your progeny, and it affects the rest of us. We can't do it alone. It takes lots of us, a collection of men and women of courage, of faith, of honor, of integrity. The question for you to ask yourself, and you need to do some serious soul searching in this decision-making process, is where do I stand? Will I stand for liberty, freedom? Will I stand for the right to make my own decisions? Am I willing to do what is necessary to preserve and defend this nation and this way of life that is in line and morally right with the universe? Ethically right with the universe, scientifically right with the universe. John Adams told us that liberty must at all hazards be supported because we have a right to it, derived from our Maker. And even if we didn't, our fathers have earned it and bought it for us, at the expense of their ease, their estates, their pleasure, and their blood. Will you make all of that sacrifice worthless? Liberty must at all hazards be supported. We have a right to it, because it was delivered to us, given to us, derived from our Maker. And I don't care whether you consider that Maker to be a God in heaven or a swirl of magic dust out of the universe. It makes no difference. And even if it had not been given to us, so if you believe that all of that is fantasy and fairy tale. Great. Because even if it is, our fathers have earned it and bought it for us with their blood at the expense of their ease. They gave up their estates, their holdings, their land, their businesses. They put it all on the line. They sacrificed their pleasures. They took themselves out of positions of ease. They separated themselves from that which they chose to do what had to be done. And many of them lost their lives, their freedom, their liberty, their children, their wives, their husbands, their families, so that you would have an opportunity. Where do you stand? It's the only question I have for you. Where do you stand? We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about new gun rights war. It's on. They've had their deep breath. They're back for more. Just never ends with these people, folks. It's like the Chinese water torture. Drip, drip, drip. Find us on the web at americasvoicenow.org, facebook.com/americasvoicenow, youtube.com/americasvoicenow, spreaker.com/americasvoicenow, google.com/plus, the plus symbol, America's Voice Now. We're out there. Seek and you shall find. We'll be right back.